All right. Hello, hello, as everyone trickles in. Hello, good afternoon. Good morning. Hi, Kyle. How are you today?
I'm delightful.
Delight. What has you so delightful on this fine Thursday?
After this, I get to not work for the rest of the day.
Oh, any fun plans?
Just work around the house.
Oh,
So fun for me, not fun for everybody.
I think you should go out and get some ice cream if you're going to have to do housework today.
I live with some delightful ladies that keep ice cream in stock in the freezer, so we are good there.
Since that was our theme of last week. We'll let everybody trickle in and start in a minute or so. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us. We are excited to talk about from audit to action today, secure compliance, and how it keeps you SEC ready year round. That is one of my least favorite three-letter words, but I'm sure we could think of some other ones too.
SEC is not so bad. We'll sort it out today.
We will. Any fun plans for your weekend?
Just hanging out with my people. I think that's the big thing for this weekend. How about you?
I love that. I'm the same. I'm the same. Not too much, which is always nice. Although I always get up to something. All right, Kyle. I don't know about you. Am I starting too soon, or are you ready to jump in?
I'm in if you're in.
Let's do it. And action. All right, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our Secure Compliance Part 2 of our Kyle Hendrickson webinar. We are so excited to have him here and to be discussing more about how our secure audit and secure compliance tie in together. As always, I'm your host, Claudia, and I'm happy to be jumping on into it. So, first and foremost, perhaps not most important, but first and foremost, certainly. As I said, I am Claudia. I'm the inside sales account manager over here at Visory. I deal with all of our incoming wealth management clients, which is primarily what we do here. I've had over 7 years of business to business sales. I focus on strengthening cybersecurity knowledge and safety for financial firms of all sizes. We work from, we basically mirror the market, anybody from 5 employees all the way up to 500 employees. I have extensive experience working with small businesses. I'm really excited to be hosting again today alongside my fabulous co-host here, Kyle Hendrickson. Kyle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been around for a long time. I joined Visory about a year and a half ago. And when I joined, we got the opportunity to build out this secure audit and secure compliance practice, focusing in exactly what you just said, Claudia, on how do we help wealth management firms around what seems to be a very significant item that a lot of our wealth management firms need help with getting a handle on their cybersecurity program, making sure that it is in an SEC ready state, and making sure that they're properly protecting both client data and firm data, making sure that we're handling things appropriately. I've gotten to work in banks and wealth management firms for most of my adult life, leading and building teams of cybersecurity people, compliance people, and IT people. Um, I'm excited about today.
Awesome. I'd love to hear some of the stories that you've witnessed. I'm sure there'd be some that curl my hair.
For another time.
So guys, today we're going to start with our agenda. First and foremost, why one-time audits aren't enough. I know that's a bit of a bold statement given last time we spoke a lot in depth about our secure audit, but it's not quite up to snuff when we're talking overall cybersecurity health. What secure compliance includes, what that offering actually is and what it covers, progress tracking, posture trends and reports, ongoing risk mitigation activities, employee training, and cyber insurance. Another big one that's not to miss. So please stick with us till the end for us to get into all of these wonderful topics today. As a quick recap, right, our secure audit is a baseline posture score that identifies SEC gaps. So basically what that does is it allows us to review your current environment and focus on how it differs or how it lacks compared to the SEC requirements and policies we see out there. So rather than being surprised when an audit comes your way, we can know in advance where the potential pitfalls or really great A+ marks are in your environment. Right, our initial audit findings provide the foundation for secure compliance. So why we're partnering these two together is because they're really a yin and a yang, right? The secure audit gives us the baseline knowledge of what's going on in your environment, what's going on with your technical, and then the secure compliance keep us based on the audit going in the right direction, right? So it's sort of like your starting line versus the actual race. The secure compliance will really be able to help us build off of what we've already understood and gotten to know in the audit process. So we're talking from snapshot to ongoing remediation. Rather than just coming in and doing a one-time measurement, we're going to consistently measure you over the months and the years that you use this product. It is so cool, it is so in-depth, and it really is changing the landscape that we're seeing when it comes to compliance management. Kyle, anything that we should that I missed that we should review about the audit from last time?
Yeah, I think you know, the secure audit, like you said, establishing that baseline. Where are we at right now so that we understand where are our gaps and where do we need to continue to mature. But it's also a point in time, and we know that things change over time, right? This is step one of a two-step process to making things easy for our clients. Everybody else has 10 steps. We have 2 steps. Figure out where you're at, and then step two, do something about it. And so that's what we're going to cover today is the doing something about it.
I love it. 2 steps versus 10. All right, so tell me a little bit about why they're not enough.
Yeah, so from a threat landscape side of things, the bad guys, the threat actors, they are not standing still. They are continuously evolving, changing their tactics, techniques, and procedures, figuring out new ways of getting into environments and abusing things, rediscovering old ways that may have been forgotten, that some of the basics, that the hygiene type stuff that a lot of clients aren't doing. We also know that there's changing expectations from the SEC, um, even if there is a defined process for the SEC, how they interpret that from an examiner or from an auditor side of things can change over time. So making sure that we are meeting the revised expectation or the focus areas for 2025 or the focus areas for 2026. And we also know that your company doesn't stand still either. You're hiring new people, you may be offering new products, new services to your clients. You may be just changing how you deliver your products, your existing products and services to your clients. You might be adding more firms, like merging someone in, or you might be splitting apart from a larger firm. And the policies, the procedures, those that point in time may not accurately reflect where your business is right now. So we know that things change over time. And that's what secure compliance is designed to do. Take the results from that secure audit, that understanding of where we're at now, and then evolve with your organization over time. We also know that you have things that you have to do throughout the course of the year. And so we'll touch on that a little bit later. But making sure that we are carrying the heavy lifting side of having a cybersecurity program, meeting those expectations from the SEC, and making this in a as easy to use process as we can. I don't know that we can get much simpler than 2 steps, right, Claudia?
No, no, truly. A
Perfect.
1-2 step process. All right, so guys, we're gonna start out right off the bat with a poll. It'll be showing up on your screen here momentarily. But our question here today is what's been the biggest challenge in translating regulatory requirements like SEC rules into a workable plan? We have a lot of different options here, so read through them carefully. The first one would be knowing exactly what the SEC expects. Who knows exactly what they expect? Right? No, turning compliance language into actionable steps. I love this. Really breaking down your layman's terms. Getting leadership and staff buy-in. Is your team, which is, you're only as strong as your weakest link, are they all included? Are they all bought in? Keeping up with evolving cybersecurity threats and limited time on internal resources that we all fight for. I'm going to give you guys one more minute as I see these rolling in. I think we're just missing a few more people. It's a hard question, and it's a good one too. I'm curious to see what the audience thinks with this. All
Well, I know
right.
what I think.
Oh, what do you think? Well, I will wait till the end. All right, guys. Perfect. I am going to end that poll and see we have a little bit of a tie. Let's look at this. Can you see that? We know knowing exactly what the SEC wants is tied with keeping up with evolving cybersecurity threats. So both very important, both very difficult to put a pinpoint on if this is not your area of expertise. Thank you so much for participating, everybody.
And I was way off, Claudia, because I would have
Well,
picked B, because I think that knowing what the SEC expects is different from turning it into something that we can actually do something about. And I think that from our engagements, we're focused in on those outcomes. How can we get you to a state where you know? And because knowing is half the battle, right? And then we can do something about it. And then how do we leverage that knowing and knowing where those gaps are and carve out where we need to improve and mature our program going forward. I do think all three of the or all five of these are really closely related. So I don't think there's a wrong choice here, but I was definitely focused in on number B or letter B, not dumb. Number B would be wrong.
we'll let that one slide. I won't tell on anybody. Thank you guys for participating. I think the knowing covers almost all of it if you really think about it. So, before I divulge too much, tell me, Kyle, what exactly is secure compliance?
Yeah, so once we complete that secure audit, we get to that knowing. We meet, we review those results with the client, and from there we start carving out a roadmap. Where are those larger risk areas that we need to do something about? And then how do we start dealing with it? And again, this is not a service that you can just purchase and expect all of your problems to go away. It does require active involvement from the client side. But we try and do all of the heavy lifting. Again, we want to make sure that this is customized and relevant for your organization. We can't make all these decisions in the dark, but we'll guide you through what we think are the right choices or the right set of decisions to be making, and then we'll help you implement them, whether they're a technical thing that needs to be implemented, a new product or service to cover a risk area, or just change a process, or something as simple, I call it simple, uh, developing new policies. Honestly, one of the first things that comes out of the secure audit as part of secure compliance is cleaning up the information security policies. Very oftentimes we find that these are either boilerplate templates that someone has downloaded off of the internet but never really customized to their own environment, or made sure that they meet the expectations from the SEC the way that the SEC is looking for information right now, and it shows. And so we clean these up. We do have a solid base to be able to start off with if we have to create policies from scratch. But really, we want to make sure that the three primary policies are in place. So the information security plan, the disaster recovery or BCP plan, the business continuity plan, and then incident response. incident response plan or policy, we want to make sure those three different areas are covered in written statements in policy format, because those are the three areas that are really going to get the attention from the SEC as you go through those examinations. And then starting from the policy side of things, we establish that base of what are we expecting from all of our employees and what are we expecting out of the program going forward. And so it's really, really nice for us to be able to define the rules and then be able to carry out those rules. Yeah, so we guide them through, do the technical remediation, do the process remediation, clean up the policies, and then we start getting into those annual activities, those things that are expected of us. Things like making sure that all those things that we think are protecting us are still working. The things like antivirus or EDR, the things like how we're handling local admins or limited users on devices, making sure that's still working as expected, screensaver timeouts and passwords, firewalls are enabled, endpoint encryption is enabled, patching is still working, all of those reoccurring things where we need to trust but verify, and then doing the test of the policies. First, doing the all employee training, then doing incident response tabletop testing, doing the business continuity tabletop testing, actually verifying that we can recover from a technical perspective. If we say we're backing everything up, can we actually get data back from it? And then doing things like user access reviews, cloud security reviews, and then we'll get into cybersecurity insurance, vendor management, and DLP, data loss prevention. So all of these things that we believe are going to be very important to you throughout the course of the year, not just because the SEC expects you to do or at least decide whether you're going to be dealing with that risk or not, but the risk is the key. We want to make sure that you're armed with the right information to make the decisions for your firm on, are we properly protecting both client data and are we protecting the firm data? Are we doing what we need to honor the trust that we've been given by our clients?
Wow, that's so powerful. Are we doing what we need to honor the trust given by our clients? You know what's something that really blows me away listening to you explain this all, Kyle, is how multidimensional the offering really is, right? It's not just, hey, we're going to scan once a month to see if, you have any terminated employees that aren't in the system or that are still in the system, right? It's not even, hey, we're going to scan once a month against the SEC. Oh, yep, you're good. No changes to the SEC or your company's fine. It's as deep as we're going to look at your policies and make sure your policies are being updated. We're going to look at all of your in-depth processes when it comes to your technology. Where are there gaps? Where are there exposures? It truly blows my mind how multi-dimensional secure compliance really is when you come at it from all that's offered in one spot.
I agree. And just to add to that, um, there's a lot of, when we reviewed the marketplace and creating this offering, there is a lot of wishy-washiness and a lot of undefined things in these types of engagements. We are very prescriptive. We have a quarter by quarter plan, and we'll get into that, of exactly what we're going to do and why it matters to both the SEC and managing risk for the firm. So we are proud to say that we are not leaving it unsaid. We are defining exactly what we are delivering and the value that we know that it contains for our clients that are working with us.
Awesome. Okay, so I know we've really started our deep dive, but tell me a little bit about this tracking portion of that secure compliance.
Yeah, so we have two things. So we have technical experts that are on the line with our clients and going through the results, but we also utilize a technology platform that allows us to track and report on those changes over time. So we have trending, we have task tracking, we have a visual representation of where we are and where those gaps are. along with a visual representation of what our external attack surface looks like from a vulnerability scanning perspective, and then also from a Microsoft Secure Score. So how are you keeping your Microsoft tenant secure as well? Because nearly everybody in the business world is using either Microsoft 365 or Office 365 for their email environment at least. And we want to make sure that that's kept secure, because we know that that is one of the root points of compromise from the threat actors, since that is a cloud service that is available to be poked and prodded at any time by anybody on the internet. And so there's strategies that we can implement to help reduce that attack surface as well. And then when we do our assessments, we don't just make things up. We are following prescriptive, defined frameworks. And so we find the best framework for your organization. In the wealth management space, there's two primarily that we work with. The SEC framework, obviously. We also have found a lot of, or not a lot, a good number of our wealth management firms on the East Coast also are subject to the state of New York's Department of Financial Services, CRR 500, their cybersecurity requirements for financial services people within the state of New York. So if you're serving clients or if you have a location in New York, you may be subject to that. We've uncovered that for a number of firms where their compliance partners had missed that fact. And it was kind of eye-opening for them that their IT provider could find those things for them. The other one that we normally deal with is NIST CSF. And then in smaller organizations, the CIS, the Center for Internet Security's 18 critical controls may be appropriate. But again, a lot of our work is centered around the SEC and then the state of New York's Department of Financial Services requirements.
I think that's a huge one too that you just plugged in there at the end, the state of New York. So this does cover those New York regulations as well. I get a lot of questions about that during my sales process with prospects.
Yeah, it's one of those things we don't always forget, or we don't always remember state requirements, and we want to make sure that we're covering that with our clients as well. Uh, when we get into remediation, we focused in on how do we solve for the largest risks first. And in most cases, we are also the IT provider from the Visory side of things with the secure workplace and all of those things that we provide to our clients. And so we carve up tasks and tickets for that side of Visory. Or in some cases, we are not the IT provider and we're providing this as an agnostic service. And so we carve up tasks for that MSP that's providing those IT type resources to your firm. Some cases we do that for internal IT, but regardless, there's going to be technical things that need to be taken care of. There's going to be process changes that need to occur, and then there's going to be policy related changes all along the way. We do need to make sure that we are defining what is this program, what are the rules of our program, and how do we get there from an implementation side of things, and communicating that up through leadership, making sure that they're aware and supportive of the program. Because if we're doing this in a vacuum, if we're doing this without their knowledge, it's not going to be sustainable. This needs to be part of the culture, and this needs to ride alongside of the rest of the compliance initiatives for the organization.
Wow, I just am kind of obsessed with this offering, if I can be honest with you. I appreciate it. Um, you ready for the next slide?
Well, before we jump into the next slide, to talk about the score gains, and this is a little bit of a gamification.
Mm.
When we do these assessments, we measure it 0 to 10, 10 being the best. And so very likely, or most often, when we onboard a new wealth management firm into the system and do that secure audit, and then we transition into that reoccurring work, that secure compliance work, month over month, week over week, we very rapidly start improving that measurement. And while it's an arbitrary measurement from 0 to 10, it gives us some guidance around how are you doing firms that we have assessed, where are we seeing the most secure or the most risk conscious wealth management firms scoring in at, and how do we compare that against yourself, and giving some perspective against both size and scope of other firms that we have assessed. So industry knowledge and have gone through this before with many other firms allows us to give that feedback of how are you doing against peers. And I know that's a really
Mhm.
difficult thing to get a lot of times. Both what does the SEC expect from us? And then how are we doing against our peers? Are we doing okay? And I think that's a really valuable perspective to understand, because it helps define how much priority do we need to give this throughout the year, uh, and what maturity level do we need to achieve?
The transparency is really what blows me away in being able to get a score, an actual number to see how you're doing. And then, like you said, comparing it against peers is invaluable, right? Everybody wants to keep their cards to their chest most of the
Yeah.
time, but this really allows an opening or a viewpoint into, hey, truly, what are other folks doing and how am I stacking up?
And then the last item on the screen here, Claudia, this is a result of a couple different questions that we've gotten from firms as they've exited out of their secure audits and into secure compliance. Should we be sharing these results with the SEC? It points out a lot of areas where we need to improve. And so we had the conversation around, well, first of all, this shows that you're identifying the risk. So that in itself is a good thing. That's going to set you apart from many, many other firms that aren't going through this level of scrutiny and aren't trying to change where they're at in life, according to the SEC. And so I don't have a problem with saying recommending the sharing of these types of reports, and or even using this as your annual risk assessment. But
Mhm.
what I would say is any finding on the report that maybe doesn't show your firm in a favorable light, we need to make a decision within the firm, because cybersecurity is not about the absence of risk. It's not about solving for everything. It's about making sure that we're managing that according to the risk profile of the organization. We may not solve for everything. In fact, I don't know of any firm that's ever solved for absolutely every risk. There's always going to be a risk that we want to manage, in some way. And cybersecurity insurance is a good example of that. We have someone else stepping in to share that risk with us. So that's not necessarily a bad thing that we haven't fixed everything, but we should acknowledge that, hey, we have a plan in place to address these items over the next 12 months, over the next 3 months, over the next month, that sort of thing. Or we feel as a firm that this is not a risk to our firm, and we are choosing to accept this. And really defining out those management responses and your approach, and going through this assessment, sharing those results, again, not a bad thing.
I think it's such a great point, and it's a very basic comparison, but cyber insurance is like your car insurance, right? You can be the safest driver out there, you can be the safest company when it comes to your cyber out there, but that doesn't 100% eliminate the risk that somebody's gonna wreck into you on the highway.
Agreed.
While I flip to this next one, I did have a question come in about how this is related to secure workplace. So,
Yep.
secure workplace being our overall offering, if you want to kind of give some insight on that.
Yeah, so if you want to think about it, it's overlapping fields of vision. So one of the things that we were tasked with by our clients over the previous 18 months before creating this offering, was our clients were asking for more, more above and beyond those technical products and solutions that we've been good at delivering to our clients all. They wanted more advisory, more how are we doing against the expectations of the SEC, knowing that there's other things that are involved in maintaining compliance above and beyond making sure that we have antivirus or EDR, above and beyond making sure we have an IT provider to help keep us safe, above and beyond having email filtering, above and beyond doing know before or social engineering phishing email testing. There's other stuff that's required as part of that ongoing program throughout the course of the year. And that's what our clients were asking us for. It was, how do we
Mm,
understand what the expectation is if we go through an SEC audit? How do we know that we're fully compliant against those expectations? How do we know where we're at according to other firms? Like, how do we compare against our peers? And how do we just know that we're doing the right thing above and beyond, again, these technical things that we're getting from you all? And so that's where that secure audit and secure compliance were born out of, is
mm.
delivering on that more that we were being asked for.
That's awesome. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they all say. So thank you very much for that explanation. Secure Workplace is more your standard everyday offering. This is taking everything to the next level. So
Exactly.
tell me a little bit about quarterly and annual activities. What does that look like?
Yeah, so when we get into quarterly activities, again, we lay this out through the course of the year. We find it very useful to start talking about things in 4 chunks throughout the year. And the
Mm,
first chunk that we talk about is starting to look at and building out the policy. So information security policy, business continuity plan, incident response plan. We want to make sure that all three of those areas are addressed and customized to your environment, and that we're doing everything that we say we're doing inside of those policies. And again, it's relevant to the organization. We also start our endpoint health checks and our vulnerability scanning with with the different firms we're working with. And every quarter, we'll go through and run a new external vulnerability scan, that external attackers surface area, looking at website, public IP addresses, and again, your Microsoft Secure Score. And we know that these things can change over time. So we want to continue to revisit these. Trust but verify, because technical controls can fail, things break, things like patch management can fall apart over time and turn into a mess. And so even if we know that we're delivering these services, we just want to trust but verify and make sure everything is still working. All the things that we think are protecting us are still protecting us month over month, quarter over quarter. So we do those types of checks every quarter. When we look at those, the second chunk, the second quarter, we want to go through and do those user access reviews. So reviewing all of our cloud-based systems that may not be tied into a centralized identity, making sure that we are comparing against an active list of employees, and making sure we don't have any separated employees that still have access to any of those systems. Same thing with your Microsoft tenant, your Microsoft 365, Azure, Office 365, again, making sure we don't have any separated employees who still have access to any of those systems. And then we want to make sure that we're reviewing against excessive admin privileges. We know that there should be some sort of role-based access in all of those cloud-based systems. And we want to make sure that not everybody is an admin, or that that admin group is limited. We also want to make sure that we're not using shared accounts, or if we are, that they are expected, and it's something that the firm has decided to do, because we want to have individual accountability or traceability for every identity in the system taking action if we can. And that's not to like punish people for doing the wrong thing. It's to understand and be able to troubleshoot if something occurs, why and who, so that we can find out root cause if we need to investigate. We also do security training. Now, most firms that we work with, they are doing annual compliance training. They are also doing some sort of frequency around know before or social engineering phishing tests. Um, in this, we also want to make sure that we're covering with all employees the expectations around information security policy, those expectations around business continuity plan, and the expectations around incident response plan. All those things that we defined in that first quarter, we want to make sure that the employees are up to speed on what the new changes are for the year, and then giving them a chance to ask questions and making it relevant for them, talking about incidents and other war stories that we have gone through with other clients or other cybersecurity incidents, and making it relevant to them. And that covers our
You-
first half.
Sorry, Kyle, I was just gonna say what I really find fascinating is the user access cleanup, right? You don't think about maybe the Microsoft has been deactivated, but you don't think about that one weird marketing website you use to host documents, or that one social media platform that that employee had access to. And I think that's such a good way to keep the house clean, if you will. And a very small thing, but that's something that can easily escape you or be pushed off.
Agreed. Well, and then for this last half of the year, quarter three, we'll focus in on those testing, the trust but verify, the business continuity tabletop test, the disaster technical recovery test, making sure that the things that are getting backed up, that we can actually restore those items. And then the incident response tabletop test, along with that quarterly vulnerability scan, the endpoint health check, and then we jump into rounding out the year. Information security or cybersecurity insurance renewals, making sure we're covering that support, talking with the broker or the carriers, making sure that we are aligned with any new expectations that may be have come out over the course of the previous 12 months that will be going into effect during renewal period, making sure we can say yes to everything that needs to be said yes to, and no that everything needs to be said no to on that questionnaire you're going to get, and make sure that you're best positioned for the lowest rate for the appropriate limits or sublimits. And again, if we can take advantage of premium reduction, whatever we can do to do that.
And
And
talk
then
about
we,
multi-dimensional, right? We're going to be
yep,
involved in helping with your renewal too. That's huge.
agreed. There's certainly for larger wealth management firms, there's a lot of advantages to actually going through above and beyond that questionnaire that your broker or your carrier gives you, and actually having a conversation about why they're asking for certain questions and telling them all about all the things that you have done in relation to those specific items, and then items that may weren't on their cybersecurity questionnaire, making sure that they understand that you take cybersecurity serious. Having those conversations can have a positive impact on premiums being paid. And
Huge.
then we also get into vendor management and then data loss prevention. We want to make sure that we are honoring those commitments as well, that the SEC expects us to do. And a lot of clients handle vendor management on their own. For the clients that do not have a program in place for vendor management, we step in and we help solve that problem for them.
Wow. I really just am always blown away by how much you and your team do when it comes to actually implementing these activities.
Agreed. We try to again be very prescriptive. We're not trying to say we'll do everything. We know those required activities that are part of a good cybersecurity program, and then making sure that they align with those expectations from the SEC. And again, we're just trying to round this out and make sure that we have a comprehensive program going forward. And most often, we're working with compliance leaders, CCOs, or operations leaders. They don't always have a background in IT. They may be technical, they may be in a position where they've had to figure a lot of things out, and they're wonderful. But they also aren't cybersecurity experts. And so we're here to help translate what these risks are and making sure that they're understood in context to business risk.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Well, I'm ready for the next slide.
All right. Sorry. Technical difficulty there for a second. Oh, I
No
love
problem.
this visual so much.
So, ongoing risk mitigation, some of those things that trust but verify, I think is really, really important. Making sure that we think that all those things we think are protecting us are actually protecting us. We have a lot of conversations around architecture and what is the right architecture for logging into the cloud-based systems versus not. Do we need something like Harmony SASE, the new version of VPNs that encrypted tunnel for accessing our cloud-based apps? And then if we do that, are there additional protections we can put in place to protect our Azure or our Microsoft 365 through IP address restrictions, defining how things are able to be able to log into and controlling those points of access and reducing that attack surface. So there's a lot of really technical stuff that we jump into to make sure that we're doing the right things for the organization to reduce risk. And then just because we have a policy doesn't mean that we know how to use it. And so I liken it to if you have a plan, you have hope until you have tested it. So we want to make sure that this is something that you can actually use as an organization. So we go through incident response tabletop testing and BCP testing, the business continuity plan testing with leadership within your organization and making sure that we can move beyond hope into an actual actionable plan. And we document this. We provide the memo to get into your leadership committee and get it on those committee meeting minutes so that it satisfies the expectation from the SEC. And we guide you through that process of documenting any lessons learned, any items that need to be covered or addressed over the upcoming months, and make sure that we are putting all of those to bed, making sure that we're addressing anything that came out of those exercises.
Hmm. Wild.
And then we also know that expectations from the SEC change over time. And so we want to make sure that as we learn more from our clients who are going through SEC audits, that we're sharing those SEC revised expectations with our other clients. This is a part of one helps the many. And so we have the benefit of having many firms that have gone through SEC audits over the previous 12 months. Again, we're here to share those expectations, the feedback that we have gotten going through those SEC audits. And then if you get into those auditor meetings with the SEC and you need us to ride alongside of you in those meetings, we're happy to join and be your counterpart for cybersecurity and really help guide you through those types of meetings. A lot of times it's just a request list, but sometimes it's an interview driven process. We're here to help either way.
I think it's so powerful. Like we were talking about previously, and one of, a big benefits to this offering too is that it's not in a silo. Just like you said, the one helps the many, right? We're taking the knowledge not just from the different, even SecureCompliance customers that we serve, but also from the deep knowledge in the industry of being in wealth management, in financial institutions, and banks like yourself for so many years.
Exactly.
Uh, all right. Tell me a little bit about my favorite topic, which is employee training and leadership development. If you've been on a webinar with us before, folks, you know this is normally my favorite thing to hound on.
Well, I think the big thing is we've been there and we've done that before. And so being able to share having gone through these types of situations with either new leaders or leaders that have a new focus around SEC compliance or those cybersecurity expectations from the SEC, again, we're here to share expectations, what those audits have looked like in the past, and give any guidance that we can, and coach people up around managing cybersecurity risk, because it really, at the end of the day, it's business risk. We also know that certain areas within your business, just like are going to have an increased attack surface. So accounts payable, account managers, or IT, people with the ability to either change things on devices or change client details within your system. So address changes, phone number or email changes, those things that could be used to manipulate uh, one of your people in the future for getting money out of client accounts, and then making sure that we have the proper processes in place to review money transfer requests or disbursements or withdrawals, those types of things. We want to make sure that we are addressing those things appropriately. Now, a lot of firms have this covered, but we have run into a few firms where we've had to come in and give training or revise procedures or make suggestions on improving things to reduce fraud within their organization. We're here to assist. And then we also we complement the secure workplace phishing testing. So that's offered as part of the secure workplace in most offerings that we have offered to our clients over the years. I know there are some early clients that may still need to get that added to their account, but in most cases that is available. We take advantage of that. And from our perspective, this is less about measuring the number of people who have clicked on a link. This is more about measuring the number of people who have reported a suspicious email, because we want to create a culture from within the organization where it's a safe place to say, I might have screwed up, I might have done something wrong. And oftentimes things will get through email filters. That's just the nature of the beast. It's going to happen because we have people that we pay in every single firm all day long to click and open things on both the internet and email. That is their job. And so we want to make sure that if they get that funny feeling or that suspicious kind of thought in their mind after they've taken an action, that it's still safe to tell somebody without being berated or put down. We want to make sure that they feel supported in telling somebody so that we can investigate, whether that's an internal to the firm investigation to make sure that nothing bad occurred, or reaching out to Visory as part of Secure Workplace and, hey, can you check this out and make sure that nothing malicious occurred, or that credentials were not compromised, or that a bad guy doesn't have access to a system. Can you investigate this for us? And we do that, and we want to encourage that culture.
I really appreciate that you brought that up, and it brings up 2 points in my mind. First being that typically when a bad actor does gain access to an environment, they're not operating immediately, typically, right? Normally it sits behind the scenes, and then at a given point they will go in with attacking your accounts payable, trying to get information, whatever their goal may be. So there is time to jump on it quickly. And I also love that you bring up culture, right? We talk about culture in so many facets of running a business, between, employee culture with your customers, customer service culture, all of that entails, right, brings together what your offering is into the market. But how about the culture of not berating folks if they accidentally click on a bad link, right? I love that. That's so important, because if people feel safe to bring it up, guess what? You're going to be that much stronger as a company altogether, and that much safer.
Exactly.
All right, everyone's favorite topic. I get asked about this a lot. I just saw a big sigh, Kyle. Tell me about cyber insurance and regulatory synergy. What a great word.
Well, I think the key takeaway from this is making sure that there's an active partnership with your broker or with your carrier that you're working with, knowing what their expectations are so that you can meet them. Honestly, if you are meeting their expectations are around making you an acceptable risk to them so that they don't have to pay out a claim. So if you're meeting those expectations, you are effectively helping to drive out risk out of your organization. And that is our goal with both the making sure we're compliant with the SEC expectations, but sometimes there's things that are different that are also identified by the insurance carrier. And again, that's all just risk to your organization. And we take that as a challenge and we want to make sure that we are using all the available tools that we have to help you manage that cybersecurity risk effectively. Making you the insurance carriers leads to less in premiums, or it may lead to increasing either your limits or sublimits because a lot of policies will carve out specific items like breach response or forensics or other things with specific caps that they will cover in those areas. And they may not be enough for your firm if bad things should occur, and we want to make sure that you're properly protected. Um, that's
You have
really in
a
a nutshell. We try to we engage with the carriers and the brokers early. We don't want to wait until the month of the renewal. We want to start looking and asking, has the questionnaire been revised? Is there any meetings that we need to do? How do we make sure that you are apprised of all of the progress that we have made over the previous 12 months of working with Visory and how that will impact our cybersecurity risk? And having those conversations 3 or 4 months ahead of the renewal so that it's not a surprise, that they know that you've been making improvements and they can plan and adjust accordingly.
And I would say too, we have a fantastic webinar we did earlier in the year with a cyber insurance company that goes deeper into this topic too. So we could do another presentation about it, but highly recommend taking a look at our YouTube channel for that one.
Perfect.
All right,
And
oh, please, Kyle, go ahead.
I'm good. I'm ready for you.
I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was so excited. We've got another poll, you guys. So we'll let this pop up on your screen here. And it's going to be a little bit different. There should be a QR code posting up on your screen. Here, if not, here it is. Go ahead and take a picture of this for me. Oh, I already see some folks doing it. We're going to rank in order of importance which of the following has the biggest influence on your cybersecurity program. So I'm going to leave this beautiful QR code up for a second while everybody goes in. Ooh. Kyle, I don't think you have the all-seeing eye that I get on my side of things, but I really get to see the answers roll in live, which is exciting for me.
Yeah, I don't get to see that.
We'll give it another couple seconds, guys, as you all fill this out. Thank you so much for answering. Hmm. I'm hoping the QR code is working well. Um, All right, and we will call that it for the QR code. We're talking compliance, client trust, or risk reduction. What is the primary importance? All right, I'm going to share the results. Kyle, what do you think about this? Looks like we're seeing very important being risk reduction. I tend to agree, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think all three of these are very much related. Um, I don't think there's a wrong answer. We are in the business of trust from our clients. Otherwise, they wouldn't let us manage money. They wouldn't give us money. And part of how we manage that client trust is managing risk and making sure, as part of that, is compliance risk, making sure that we are going to be able to continue operating, that we don't have to have problems with the SEC, our regulator. So I think they're all fairly related. I like seeing how this all weighs out as well.
Me too. I appreciate you guys all for taking that poll for us. All right, well, let's talk a case study. So, talk compliance maturity, give me real life action, Kyle.
So real life, quick and quick stories, you know, we've helped very rapidly improve their overall cybersecurity maturity. Um, More importantly, helping reduce risk for their organization, both from a compliance and SEC risk, but also from a cybersecurity risk. We were able to take them from generic template-based policies that they had gotten from another provider, rewrote everything in a way that mattered to their firm, do that employee training, and then close up the technical gaps that were existing and the process gaps that were existing, and really help solve for that cybersecurity risk. We know that this firm went through an SEC audit recently within the last we'll call it 60 days. And no findings. We will never guarantee that you will have zero findings out of an SEC exam. Exams are led by people, and people sometimes need to find a win. And sometimes people are really creative at creating very nitpicky type findings. But we will have helped you cover all of the major areas with the SEC expectations, and we will have positioned you to very rapidly be able to adapt and overcome if one of these nuisance findings does come up from an SEC exam. If one of our controls have failed, we will help solve for that and make sure that we put the appropriate things in place to make sure that that's not reoccurring. But we've had very, very good results out of SEC examinations for firms that we've been working with. And that's really, um, I know I'm going to struggle with the right words, but it makes me feel good knowing that we've had that kind of impact on our firms.
I think those are the perfect words. I have a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat. I think that is it for my slides, but let me be sure here. Oh, no, but pause for a second, Kyle, because I do have a question that came in from Andrew. How often does your team revise and update and improve your scoring process? So what kind of, you know, cleaning process do we have on our own system?
So in the scoring process, as we are completing tasks, as we are solving for risks, we are updating the system. So that's in a semi-real-time fashion. So that score is going to adapt and improve as we make improvements with each individual firm. As far as making sure that we are meeting the SEC's expectations, as those different expectations come out, we revise the framework within the system and make sure that we're still in alignment with what we're committing to you, our clients, around. And again, we're doing those as they come up. So we are in a mostly real-time or semi-real-time state around what is the current posture of all the firms that we are working with at any given time. So we try to be as current as possible.
Appreciate that. So, when one helps the many, when firms combine, give me a little bit of information.
Well, when firms combine or when firms separate. So we've worked with firms both ways where a firm is spun out from another larger organization and is now being operated as a standalone entity, or when we work with firms that are in acquisition mode and acquiring other firms. In both cases, there's going to be differences, both in operational practices, in culture, in expectations around cybersecurity. And so we've been engaged both on the acquisition side, so truing up those organizations and making sure that they meet the new expectations of the acquiring firm that we've been working with, and communicating that and help shift that culture from a cybersecurity risk perspective. So we've been very it's neat to be involved in those and help guide that process along. We've also had a couple of cases where wealth management firms have been spun out as separate entities from a larger parent group. And in that case, sometimes you just don't get everything, and that everything that you don't get includes, um, well, how do we write a new policy for essentially a new firm around information security? How do we do incident response or BCP? All this was taken care of for us before. What do we need to do to meet those SEC expectations? Because again, we've had somebody taking care of that for us before. And so very rapidly making sure they're in a confident state that they are in meeting the expectations from the SEC. So we've been able to assist clients on both sides of that when firms combine or when either a new firm starts or gets spun out from a previous firm.
And I think we see them pretty equally, right? The name of the game lately, or the hot topic, is aggregators in the space, but just as much as aggregators are growing and acquiring other firms, are firms spinning out from larger entities, like you said.
I would say that we deal a lot more with the aggregators, but there are a couple that have been spun out. So generally more with the aggregators, more on the acquirer side.
Maybe I see more on the spin-outs just in the secure workplace versus in the secure compliance world. We'll have to talk about that.
Sounds good.
All right. So, question and answer time. Guys, we are so grateful that you have stuck with us this whole time. I know we've answered some questions as they've trickled in. I want to address one that was submitted that I'm sure is on top of everyone's minds right now. What does it cost? And I am going to answer that it depends. So I'm sorry for keeping you on the hook a little bit more. You'll notice on this next QR code, well, here, let me jump forward. You can book a meeting with me, so take a picture of that. I'm happy to work with you guys and Kyle to get the cost specific to your size company. That's really what it comes down to. There's not a flat rate cost necessarily. So take a picture of that. We can reconvene on the cost. And I also wanted to share our secure compliance pamphlet. So this is a one-time handout to review, take back to your team, discuss what we've talked about here today. As always, Kyle, it is such a pleasure chatting with you. I'm grateful to work with you in and around clients as well as in and around webinars. So feel free, guys, download that free Secure Compliance workbook. And then finally, don't fret because there is another part 3 to this series. Kyle and I will be back with how to stay in continuous compliance. So we talked about our SecureAudit. We talked about the Secure Compliance product. Now we're going to talk about how to stay in continuous compliance. It's the perfect trio. Don't miss it. We will see you December 16th, right around the holidays. Look forward to talking to you guys then. Again, if you're curious to get a little bit more information from Kyle and I on how this applies to your particular firm, what the cost is, what the lift is and workload, please go ahead and take a screen snap of that, book a consultation with me. We'll have a great time. We'll get into the weeds a little bit more. Kyle, any closing thoughts for us today? Thank you as always for being my webinar buddy.
I got nothing else. I appreciate getting to hang out with you, Claudia.
Oh, I appreciate hanging out with you. Well, folks, I think we are right on the money at an hour. So thank you all so much for joining, and we will talk to you next time.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.